what they were. If they weren't Adolf Hitler, if they weren't part of the Hitler family, then they were apparently nothing to do.
Why don't you give us some examples of some of the killing and some of the tragedies that Hitler caused the Jewish people? Anne Frank, for example. Something.
Yes, the most famous death that happened in the Holocaust was Miss Anne Frank. She wrote, well, she had a diary, and she kept all of her experiences about the Holocaust in that diary. And when she had passed away, her father found the diary, and he planned to be able to, and he made sure that that book was published and that everybody got to see how horrible the Holocaust was. And that's what he did. It's been published in almost all languages. It's so many languages like German or English. And so, yeah. And so that's how important Anne Frank was to the Holocaust, and and she's basically the most, she's what people think of when you hear Holocaust. You think, you immediately think of the Diary of Anne Frank. You just right on the spot. And she was so much more than that. She wasn't just an author. I mean, she didn't even plan to be an author. She was just a regular girl who kept a diary.
Very good. And so in a real sense, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of these dictators, and I think you've indicated that a dictator is a person that controls the government, the political government,
the ruler of
everything, and et cetera. And now, what do you think over the last 2 minutes that we have doing this segment? What do you think that were some of the most destructive things that dictators did outside of actually killing people?
I think that was the worst thing that they did. I mean, they killed people, they ruined families, they separated families. They did so much to these people, to innocent people that didn't deserve this. And they were killed because of what they believed in.
Well, if you looked at these dictators, how would you classify them in terms of how they suppress folks' freedom and their citizenship and perhaps their right to vote? Did they control that aspect of the lives of people?
Yes, they took away every right that the people in that country had. They took away the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the right to citizenship, and the right to be able to be a citizen.
To be free.
To be free, right.
And in a real sense. And so in a real sense, these dictators that you've identified in Europe during the period of the Second World War, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of the leaders in a real sense because of the...
but he is nothing compared to Stalin and Mussolini.
So, and that's what we're doing. We'll get ready doing this next segment. We'll come back and we'll talk about the other two dictators that you've identified, Joseph Stalin and Mussolini. And then that will give us, during this last segment, an opportunity to pull all of this together and come up with some general statements in reference to dictators, European dictators during this particular time. Because I think that that's essentially what we're trying to get at, that while this happened a long time ago,
it is
that
still
the idea
today.
of freedom, the idea of citizenship, and the idea of voting is still very, very vital. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she has given us some information concerning European dictators during the Second World War. And now she will continue her discussion in reference to those dictators. Why don't you pick up where we left off the last time, Alana?
Now, if you're just tuning in, we on the first two segments, we talked about my background in education. I'm Alana McLaughlin, 6th grader at John Early Museum Magnet Middle School. And in the second segment, we talked about Adolf Hitler, the Nazi Party, and how he basically was the cause of World War II. Now, in the third segment, I told you that I'd talk about Joseph Stalin and Mussolini. Now, let's start with Stalin. He was, when you rank these three men, basically, Mussolini would be like kind of the man in the middle. Like he wasn't, well, not Mussolini, but Stalin. I mean, he wasn't like the worst dictator, and they'd never be the best. But I mean, like in these three, like rating them about how bad they were, Adolf Hitler would be at the bottom, then it'd be Stalin, then it'd be Mussolini, because Mussolini basically caused the most trouble. Now Stalin, he's basically the same as Adolf Hitler, but in a different form, had a different mindset, and so many other things wrong.